Progress does come. Your dad was right. And when it does, like today, people's lives are made better, and the future becomes brighter, and a nation can be transformed. That's what's happening now.
Hello and welcome to episode 128 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week I dig into why Japan is not making use of their abundant wind resources. Turns out Godzilla is only partially to blame.
Tesla will begin shipping their electric semi-truck this year. No word yet if they'll be shipping them via Tesla semi-truck.
We look at the details for EVs and a new Biden climate bill. Small detail not talked about, you have to wear aviators while driving any rebated car.
Mazda sold only 8 electric vehicles in the month of July. It's a headline and a punchline all in one.
All that and more on this edition of The Clean Energy Show. Also this week, we're going to talk about an update to the U.S. sending oil to Germany, F-150 Lightning towing range for my specific situation of towing a tent trailer. As big as the Biden climate bill is, it's still less than Europe and China. It's not just a Volkswagen cheating on emissions. A Chinese automaker is upping what supercharging speed can be, and it turns out backyard chickens lay tainted eggs. And Tainted Eggs was the name of a all-girl punk band in my high school, Brian.
I just wanted to add something to last week. We were chatting about my new electric bicycle, the Ride 1 Up V2 Roadster Gravel Edition. It does have a smaller battery, which I was saying is one of the maybe the downsides of it. But you can buy an extra external battery from the company, and it clicks into the kind of water bottle spot there on the bike. So for $240 US, you can buy an extra little battery.
What are the stats of that battery, Brian?
I do not know the stats of the battery, nor do I really care.
Well, is it a 9-volt that you took out of your smoke detector for $200, or does it actually do something for you?
Yeah, it does something. It's, it's a battery the size of a water bottle, a little bit bigger. So,
I was talking to you that it was odd because we actually got a press release from Saudi Arabia, from a Saudi Arabian energy company, boasting about their solar. Because we've been speculating for a long time because we keep charting in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Who's listening to us in Saudi Arabia? And if so, send us a message. No one's sent us a message, but someone is listening. By the way, I want to talk to you about shower heads.
Okay.
Why? It's because I just vacationed at your cottage and you're building a new one. Yeah. And I was thinking, all the decisions you have to make, it's like being in a film. What color do you want this car in the background? Yeah. What color do you want this hat on this extra? Being a director means making countless decisions, actually, to the point where your brain is dead. But you're going to have to make decisions like that on your house because you're building a brand new house. You're going to have to say, absolutely, I want a faucet. Now, you use your water from a tank. It's shipped in and probably replenished after my family's been there. Yeah. With our desire for showers and cleanliness and
there's no running water. Everybody has their own cistern.
But your tap, when you turn on the tap in your washrooms, it comes out like a fire hydrant, there's nothing restraining it. Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, first of all, you could probably, if we're still going to live there, you could probably buy some sort of aerator to put on. That would be the simple thing to do. We did change the shower head in the guest house to a low flow one because it wasn't before. The showers are the most important, and the toilets, of course, because you want them to be efficient. It's really important. It's not just environmental. It's a matter of conserving water because it's hard to get water. You don't want to run out and keep filling it, right?
Yeah, and we think that we can use kind of a gray water system, or we can maybe use rainwater or something for the sinks and the toilets. And then I've always wanted. I don't know if it's practical for us, but you can get clean drinking water out of the air. They have these things that run like off a solar panel that just collects moisture from the air and goes through a filter. And, that's a possible way to get your drinking water.
Yeah. And, you don't drink your water out there because you don't trust your tank, right?
Yeah, we drink it separate from the water that runs through the house. Yeah.
So that might be a way of getting good drinking water. Hell, I filter my drinking water here in the house, and it's still not great.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's still not great.
We've got a good filter under the kitchen sink that it's supposed to take out lead. It's the highest level of kind of home water thing, including lead.
Oh, that's interesting. I've got an interesting story coming up on on lead in chickens.
Oh,
so
sounds like a lot of fun.
Buckle up for that one. It's a good story, though. So I don't know. And of course, lighting. A lot of people have exterior lighting on their architecture.
Yep.
It's nice to have, but is it necessary? Is it causing light pollution in a provincial park when you want to see the stars? You're a stargazer yourself. Do you want to have, are you going to have a driveway?
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to light the driveway?
Yeah. No, those are all great questions. Like, we renovated our kitchen 5 or 6 years ago, so we have some taste of what's that is like. It's like, yeah, you got to make a decision about the light above the sink. You got to make a decision about the pull handles on the cupboards and the finishes for the cabinets and, the flooring, like, what pattern for the flooring and all that. So, yeah, absolutely. Tons of questions to answer.
So when I arrived at your cottage, it was a very hot day, and I kind of roasted my fat self a bit, broiled, I guess, or deep cooked, or I don't know how you want to put it, pressure cooked. But I was a bit uncomfortable. And I was thinking, my God, there's no overhangs in this house. The sun is just beating in.
Yeah,
but there's no overhangs in my house either.
Yeah. At
all. In fact, there's less overhangs in my house than there is in your cottage. And I seem to manage fine here. I think it's better insulated. I mean, that helps. The right kind of windows help. Like the right reflectivity on modern windows helps keep the sun away in the summertime. Lets it through in the winter when it's more lower in the sky and more of a direct angle through the window. So I don't know. Your architect, has come up with a stunning design that is just, I really look forward to seeing it. Like, it's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
Are you still doing a round window for the bedroom, by the way? I have to ask.
No, at the moment it's not round. No.
How come?
Probably just matches better if it's not.
It's also like floor to ceiling windows in places. So that's going to be like, I mean, in the future, as we said last week with our letter, electricity will be free. It'll be inconsequential that you could, heat whatever you wanted to heat or cool whatever you wanted to cool, rather. But right now, it could be hard to keep that place cool, depending on how it is in the summer.
Yeah, I think we're okay because the rest of the walls will be very, very thick and super insulated. So, you're kind of allowed a certain amount of glass area before you kind of screw up that envelope. Right. So I think it'll be fine. And
then you have, assumably in the rammed earth construction that you're considering or going ahead with. Is that fair to say you're going ahead with rammed earth?
Considering, hopefully.
Okay. What's it going to look like if it's not rammed earth then? It's going to look like
exactly. No, that would be a whole different plan. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, it's very interesting, though, because the rammed earth has, sort of stored heat energy. It can store the cool from the night and let it off slowly. It can store the heat from the day and sort of moderate the house. Now, regardless of how you're making it, if you chose, say, a concrete floor, that would be one way of having, heat storage in the house. You might want to go then with a boiler then that goes through the floor. That's what a lot of people do these days. But then, boilers are complicated, as you found out for your rental house, as far as getting heat pumps for them.
Yeah, in-floor heating seems the most likely. But, there's many different ways of heating the liquid that's in your in-floor heating. So I don't see that as being a big problem.
And then you got to build a podcast studio out there, still a little sound booth with good airflow.
Yeah. There's a little kind of home theater room, so I'm hoping that area will work for a podcast.
Sure. As long as it has a good view of the lake,
Yeah.
You could shoot yourself as a backdrop then, if you wanted to.
Ooh, that's
maybe the whole house should be designed around that principle, Brian. I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And another thing I wanted to mention was I was just now looking at the local EV Facebook group as I scrolled through Facebook, and I laughed my ass off at something. Somebody bought a brand new EV, and they're asking the question that people often ask: where do I charge? What credit cards do I need? Do I need an accounts with people from different chargers? And this is Western Canada, by the way. And Cam Roger responded to this person and said that you will likely find the Flow card as being the most useful, as well as ChargePoint. To experience the reliability of a Petro-Canada charging session, purchase a lottery ticket. That is to say,
your chances of it working are about the same as winning the lottery.
I do like a bit of sarcasm now, especially when you're angry at something. That really makes me feel good to read that. And now, some updates to some previously discussed stories. I wanted to mention to our listeners that Connecticut has a new law that EV chargers have to be repaired promptly.
Wow.
However, I can't find any information on it. I saw it mentioned on Twitter by someone reliable, and I can't find it again. So if you know about Connecticut having a recent law that ensures that EV chargers are repaired within a certain time frame, send me an email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, because we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, I'm sure we have at least one listener in Connecticut.
And my friend Mike Knobloch bought his first EV. He bought Ioniq 5. And I asked him, how is it going? He had it for, I think, about 10 days or so now.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, it's awesome. It's everything I hoped for and more. It's really fun to drive. Accelerating up to speed so quickly is fun every time you do it. And Mike is not a race car driver, but he's finding this fun. He's a reasonable guy. Mm-hmm. The ride is really smooth and the seating is very comfy. It's insanely quiet, and love charging at home instead of going to a gas station, which is something that people don't realize. People worry about where you're going to charge it all the time. But the fact is, you don't take your cell phone to a gas station to charge. It's really cool to do it at home. Imagine if you didn't do that. So,
okay, an update to the ongoing dispute with Germany and Russia. There is a pipeline supplying oil from Russia to Germany, and this is kind of important for Germany. And we've just been keeping tabs on how that's going. There's a second tanker of crude oil coming from America to help kind of fill in the gap. So 570,000 barrels is due in Germany soon. And this is the second shipment from the U.S. to help bridge the gap. And Germany's hoping to reduce their reliance on Russian oil and gas by about 90% this year. So let's hope they can manage that.
Well, inflation is starting to slow down. At least here in Canada, we had the latest numbers.
Yeah, and the price of gas has come down.
It's amazing how if everyone drove an EV, it wouldn't be affecting inflation as much, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you still have to pay for goods. Goods would go up in price because gas, with trucking and so on, until we get, long-haul trucking sorted out with electrification, which is coming. And yes. Biden is about to sign the Inflation Reduction as we speak, right?
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for a couple of episodes now. This is a massive, massive bill in the U.S. I always forget what it's called. What's it called?
The Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA.
Yeah, and you expect it to be called something like the Carbon Reduction Act.
Or the Biden Climate Bill, is what some people call it.
Climate bill. But there's a nice article on Bloomberg this week, and it's called "The Inflation Reduction Act is a Climate Bill. Just don't call it one." So it's just a nice little article here about the kind of the vagaries of politics and the importance of naming these bills. It's like governments can kind of force the conversation in certain directions by calling it something. They used to just follow boring naming conventions for these kinds of things, but they realized some years ago that PR is an important part of this. It sort of reminded me of, do you remember when Walmart was kind of coming into Canada like about 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Walmart, came into Canada and really started kind of taking over town to town. They were building Walmarts and putting, kind of our local stores out of business. And it was obviously a huge change and a huge thing. A lot of people were upset about it. And, it's like, this big, massive corporation moving in to take things over. And what did they do? They started these TV commercials. I don't know if you remember this, but it was like they started featuring individuals that worked at Walmart, the Walmart greeters and the Walmart cashiers. And they kind of made it sound like it was a small town store. Like it was like, your people that work at Walmart are just like your neighbors because they are your neighbors. And, it's like, they were commercials that focused on exactly the opposite of what Walmart actually is, which is a giant corporation. And it was, kind of annoying and sickening, but it's like, well, that's the world of PR. That's kind of how this goes. So the other aspect of that I wanted to kind of mention, which we just touched on briefly, is, so yes, it is called the Inflation Reduction Act. Is that what it's actually going to be or do? And so there was an analysis that suggested that 41% of our current inflation is attributable to fossil fuel prices. So, if this can bring down the price of fossil fuels, bring down the demand of fossil fuels, then yeah, it actually should reduce inflation.
So as you were talking, I looked up a list of ridiculous U.S. legislation names that have nothing to do with one. And the Zero Tolerance for Barbaric Cultural Practices Act was one.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I think that was one in Canada, actually. That is one in Canada. Serious Time for the Most Serious Crime Act. The Unborn Victims of Crime Act. So that was an abortion-related one. So there's, but in the States, it gets weirder too.
And ultimately, it's just the name of the bill. It's, whatever's in the bill, obviously, is the important thing. So the other thing I just wanted to mention, which again comes from Bloomberg, our new best friends over there at BNEF, and they crunched the numbers in terms of this new climate bill in the U.S., and it's $374 billion, which is a lot of money, but their conclusion, and these numbers are always kind of difficult to calculate because, what's being done by government, what's being done by private. So, it's always a bit fuzzy on the numbers, but their conclusion was that this is a really good spend, but the EU and China are spending a bit more than the U.S. is with this climate bill.
Is that right? Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, China being the biggest spender right now on clean energy transition.
Getting back to the naming of this act, though, I think there was a column in the New York Times yesterday about how climate has become, part of the culture wars.
Yeah.
If you're woke, you care about the climate. I don't understand. I'm a little bit worried about where the world is going. In fact, I'm a lot worried where the world is going. Also, I think just today, people were sharing a Globe and Mail article, that was the Canadian National newspaper, about the F-150 all-electric Lightning pickup trucks, two of them being owned in the prairies here where we live, including one here nearby, Brian and I, and we've mentioned him on the show before. I assume the Globe listens to our show. I assume everybody does.
Oh, I'm sure.
High ups in Saudi Arabia will listen. I mean, Biden's probably listening right now. He's probably...
I know.
Sure. So this guy's Lightning says he can... this was interesting to me because I've been interested in facts about my own use scenario because I imagined owning a pickup truck and hauling my tent trailer, my pop-up camper, as some people call them. And he says he has one. He's got almost about as big as a pop-up trailer as you can have. He says he gets 600 kilometers driving around the city of range, but 330 on the highway with that large pop-up camper. So that gives me valuable information as a person who may want to do that in the future.
Yeah, that's a good indication of, the actual reality of it. Because, towing reduces the range by a lot, apparently.
But if I just drove our SUV, gas-powered SUV to the lake, if I towed my camper, it would have half the range. It would have half the range as well. So that's not bad. I was thinking, you'd have to charge every hour and maybe it'd be worth it because, it costs so much, but that's every 3 hours. That's want to stop then anyway, right? And I stop an hour and a half just to put more oil in my damn engine, which you won't have to do in an EV.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord. My God, I hate that.
Yes. No, I had a Nissan Sentra where we had to drive it with a bunch of extra cans of oil, which I put in that movie where we shot at that gas station.
I was thinking of putting a hose with a funnel on it inside the cabin so I could just add while I drive,
That'd be great. Oh, yeah. And one other personal update I forgot about. So I drove my Tesla up to Saskatoon to the nearest Tesla service center because I had an issue. The suspension started squeaking and the steering wheel was squeaking. So, they replaced I should find the exact name of it here. Just give me a second.
Is doohickey in the wording at all? Schmengy.
They told me that the left front upper control arm ball joint had seized.
Oh.
So they replaced that one and proactively replaced the other one as well, which it was still working fine, but I think this is probably an issue that they've experienced before. So they went and replaced the upper control arm ball joints, the left and right on the front. Yeah, it took about 3 hours. It's a 2.5 hour drive to get up there to start with. But I got there first thing in the morning and they gave me a Tesla Model X as a loaner to drive around town while I was there.
I may go up there this weekend. Do you think they'll give me one for no reason?
No, I don't think they will. This is from Drive Tesla Canada, and This is just our opportunity to mock Mazda, or Mazda, depending on where you live in the world. Only sold 8 of their electric cars in the U.S. in July of 2022. This is a very sad and pathetic number, but it really is a compliance car. I don't know who would buy this or why. It's only got a 100-mile range, 160 kilometers.
Somebody who really likes Mazda.
Someone who really likes Mazda. And I could see it maybe if, certain business case situations where you're making short little trips or something, but this is not much range than your 2013
Hell, you should buy
Nissan
one
Leaf.
just to sell it because it's going to be such a rarity if they stop making them tomorrow.
Like the actual numbers of these, this is going to be one of the most rare cars you could possibly own.
That's incredible. Yeah, they've got a very short range. The reminiscent of the early Leafs, right?
Absolutely. No, this is similar range to your car.
Yeah, and why would you do that nowadays? My car was made a lifetime ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have some details here about the Inflation Reduction Act for EVs, because we didn't get into details about this. Consumer Reports broke it down the other day. So among other provisions, the new bill will do the following. It offers a tax credit up to $4,000 on used EVs. This is new, but they have to be put into service after December 31st of next year, December 31st, 18 months from now. So the vehicles built and registered 18 months from now will be possible to buy them used with a $4,000 credit. So that's a ways off. It takes away the $200,000 vehicle cap on tax credits that made EVs and plug-in hybrids from Tesla, GM, and Toyota ineligible for tax credits because they've sold more than 200,000 of those vehicles in the United States and have used up their tax credits. So that's one reason why, GM dropped the Bolt price by $6,700 US or something to make up for that. Because Tesla doesn't care because they have way more demand than they can do. But it does away with tax credits for pricey EVs, which is something that we see criticized locally here in Canada in the news. Why are you giving tax credits to $150,000 cars like the Model X or something?
Yeah.
And so it does away with today's tax credits for pricey EVs, such as the Hummer EV, the Lucid Air, Model S and X, and Polestar, I would imagine, and Porsche and stuff like that. It eliminates tax credits for vehicles not assembled in North America. This is a critical one here because this is going to eliminate the tax credit for the BMWs, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Kia EV6, the Toyota BZ4X, not assembled here. Maybe one day they will be because, like Nissan with my car, they did 2 years in Japan and then they opened up a factory in Tennessee and one in the UK. Maybe they'll do that and maybe they'll be selling a lot more vehicles. But most important, the bill also immediately restricts the full tax credit on new EVs to vehicles with battery minerals sourced from countries that the U.S. has a free trade agreement with or recycled in North America. So you can buy a car that has recycled batteries if they're recycled in North America, but you can't buy Chinese ones. So starting in 2024, if any materials, minerals, or components are sourced from foreign entities of concern, you know who you are, China and Russia, the vehicle will not qualify for tax credit. So that is tricky, and we're going to continue to talk about that, Brian, because nobody seems to know how that's going to wash out.
Yeah, because it could be difficult to ramp that up because I think China in particular is kind of the world leader in sourcing these minerals and processing them. And so it does make sense that, we often talk about energy security. I mean, if you've got to rely on shipments of oil from, places like Russia, you realize suddenly when they go to war, oh man, that was a really bad idea. It's, all this stuff impacts the security of your country if you can't source it yourself locally.
And Russia, stop going to war. You stupid idiots.
Yeah, please stop that. The Tesla semi-truck is going to ship this year. Elon Musk announced on Twitter, and it's going to have 500 miles of range, and the Tesla Cybertruck with 500 miles of range is going to start shipping next year. So this is a fairly definitive statement. We've been really wondering when electric semi-trucks are going to finally start rolling. There's still not much in terms of semi-truck charging infrastructure, so I'm still expecting to hear more about that. We've only heard of a handful of places that have the new Tesla semi-charger infrastructure for charging. So, this will be kind of a slow rollout, I think, because of that, because of the lack of charging infrastructure. But they can probably, in some cases, charge at the existing Tesla chargers. But, trucking is a huge part of carbon emissions. So once, semis all go electric, this is a massive step forward in carbon reduction.
I'm looking forward to the next Cybertruck event where they update the pre-production, what's actually going to really happen for real. And we'll know the specs, the costs.
Mm-hmm.
The cost might go up, but
they pulled the prices down off their website several months ago, amidst this massive inflation that's happening. But, I wouldn't be surprised if the prices are double what they were originally posted at.
So much for my order.
Yeah.
One day, Brian, one day. My son and I have often discussed Japan. I can't remember the details of why, but we have this long discussion. I said, well, one day I'm going to look into why Japan has no wind. He says, why don't they do wind? Because he thinks they don't have any wind because nuclear is so great. Well, they shut down their nuclear. They're bringing it back tepidly, a little bit at a time.
But when they had their Fukushima disaster, they shut down a bunch of their nuclear.
It's easy for us to say nuclear safe, but when you're there and you're experiencing what they did, you're going to probably have a different opinion. So, I looked up the reason. I finally found an interesting paper, an article about this. It's about a year and a half old. It says that there's limited understanding of the seabed conditions surrounding Japan, unlike other locations such as the United Kingdom, because they benefited from oil and gas exploration for decades, right? So in that north coast there off of Europe, lots of oil and gas exploration for decades. So they understand it now. This is another benefit to oil and gas, is just understanding the seabed floor. So they have limited understanding of what the seabed even is because they don't go down there looking because there's not oil and gas there. It is the 7th longest shoreline in the world, so there's lots of, wind opportunity there. Another reason they've been slow is conservative government policies, lots of different departments not working together. They actually permitted some wind projects that were 3 years long. And Calciprees, there was no biters. This is a 40-year thing, Brian.
Yeah.
Another problem is their water gets very deep very quickly, down to 200 meters. It's only 50 meters close to the shore, but after a while, it gets down to 200 meters, which is too deep for offshore wind. But there's new technology around that wasn't there 10 years ago, including floating. So there's a huge opportunity for floating wind potential. And the wind potential, to my surprise, is not great on Japanese land. Not that great at all. So the best potential is in the ocean. Another setback or drawback is that most of the wind potential is in the north where there's less population. So you have to, unfortunately, send that power. I wonder if they couldn't do it through the ocean. If you were in Japan and you had a whole bunch of wind in the north, all these countries are doing undersea DC high power cables. Maybe because nothing gets disturbed, you just drop it on the seabed, and you don't have to build towers and bridges and do land studies. You just drop it down there and nobody gets hurt. Not even a fish. Speaking of which, fishing concerns, they're concerned about fish. The nuclear disaster, as you said, they temporarily shut down 54 power plants, which is a lot. I don't even know. They began shipping in coal and natural gas to, that's no way to go, but that's not good for the planet. So Fukushima was a turning point for the nation's attitude towards nuclear power, as the associated risks and costs became apparent. We always talk about the cost of nuclear. And even though a limited number of reactors are being restarted, it's unlikely that nuclear power will ever return to such a dominant position in the Japanese energy mix. The water depth drops to 200 meters, around 20 kilometers to 50 kilometers offshore. So you have a little bit of space to work with. And nevertheless, Japan has a large resource potential. This is a study done of the potential of wind of 61 gigawatts in relatively shallow waters. That's just the shallow water potential. Yeah. That's not floating or anything like that. And remember, a gigawatt is about a nuclear reactor. So And you might say, James, the wind doesn't always blow. Well, on the ocean, it does. In some places, it does almost around the clock. And by the way, this is a bit of an aside, but the first North American freshwater offshore wind farm will be in Lake Erie. Did you hear about that?
Yes, I did hear a little something, yeah.
So LeadCo asserts that the Great Lakes hold enough energy potential in wind to power the entire stinking United States. The winds of Lake Erie alone could meet over 10% of the electricity needs by 2030 just in Lake Erie. And, you know, Lake Erie is not a big lake. Lake Erie is a small lake. But yes, Chicago, the Windy City, and all these places, there's wind out there. And terrible polluted waters that you could stick wind turbines in, and they're not so deep that you can't do it. So that's interesting. I wondered when that's going to happen.
Well, I would wonder about the, I don't know, unsightliness of it. It makes more sense to me if they're off in the ocean. People might be annoyed if the Great Lakes are full of wind turbines, but I don't know. Hard to say.
Now, I'd be interested to know what the distance is. Maybe one of our listeners can send in an answer to this. What is the distance where wind turbines start to fade? Not from the curvature of the Earth, but just the atmosphere sort of blurs them out. Because you look at, you see ships offshore in the ocean, they're kind of faded. They're barely visible because even on off Toronto, you see them like that. So how far do you have to go before it's an eyesore? I guess is my basic question.
Yeah. And farther out would be better as long as it doesn't get too deep, I guess. Okay, there is a story here. I got this from CNET, and the story's a couple of weeks old, but I thought it was worth talking about it because we didn't mention it before. But Fiat Chrysler has been ordered to pay $300 million in fines over their diesel emissions fraud case. So it's not just Volkswagen that was cheating on emissions. Fiat Chrysler, which is now owned by Stellantis, $300 million in fines for lying about the emissions of more than 100,000 Jeep and Ram diesel vehicles. So this was been going on since 2017. They were first accused of doing this, and it takes a long time for this kind of stuff to wind its way through the courts. But it has finally come down, and they are guilty, and it's $300 million is the penalty. The U.S. Department of Justice this week announced that FCA has been sentenced in federal court to pay about $300 million in criminal penalties, in addition to serving 3 years of organizational probation. What do you suppose that is? Organizational probation?
Probation for the organization?
I guess. Oh, wait, I think we have a clip.
The time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me. Then as of this moment, they're on double secret probation.
Ah, that's what it is. They're on double secret probation.
What movie is that from?
I was wondering if you would recognize it. You don't?
Is it a Naked Gun related movie? Is it?
No, it's Animal House.
Oh!
And it's extra fun because that's the great Vernon Agapsowicz, known to the world as John Vernon, who is from our city of Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada.
Yeah.
But I just always remembered that clip of double secret probation.
He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. And he ended up making a movie here late in his career before he died, which was nice. I forget the name, but it had Molly Parker and Callum Keith Rennie was in it. It was shot. I visited the set one day. I actually took pictures of John Vernon on the set of this kind of Western.
That's really cool. But Brian, it's time. It's time. It's time. It's time for the Clean Energy Show Lightning Round, a fast look at the rest of the week's headlines in clean energy and climate change. Brian, where has the time gone? China's CATL plans a massive 221 hectare, $7.5 billion battery factory in East Hungary. Yeah, because why? It's Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. It doesn't matter because it's a new day. There's a new $7.5 billion battery factory announced every week. The plant will be capable of outputting 100 gigawatt hours of batteries a year. That is 100 nuclear reactors powering for an hour per year from this battery factory. And Mercedes-Benz has already gone on record stating that it will be its first customer. You know what the sound is? Time for a Clean Energy Show Fast Fact. Charging your electric car at home costs the equivalent of 30 cents per liter or less.
which is about $1.20 a gallon.
Tesla is reportedly going to build Model Ys with BYD blade batteries in their Gigafactory Berlin. What do you think, Brian? Because I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is a battery form factor that Tesla has never used before. But since Tesla's goal is to dominate the earth, they're really buying and using whatever possible batteries they can get their hands on. So BYD has been making these blade batteries, which are not exactly blade shaped, but they come in these sort of flat panels, and they're all kind of packed together in a battery pack. So yeah, I guess Tesla has figured out how to stuff those into their vehicles. So I don't know. It should be good. More supply of batteries, the better.
Oh, it's another fast fact, and this brings us back to backyard hens, which I've been waiting to talk about.
Yes.
Backyard hens' eggs contain 40 times, this is backyard hen in cities, okay? Not in farms. Contain 40 times more lead on average than shop eggs. You think you're growing your own eggs and they're healthier? No.
Oof, that doesn't sound good.
40 times the lead. And it depends on the lead levels of your soil where you live, which vary across various cities and then vary within the city. In older homes close to city centers, contaminated soils can greatly increase people's exposure to lead through eating eggs from backyard hens. And I was thinking again of chicken, Brian, because they make good pets. Most lead gets into the hens as they scratch the dirt and peck food from the ground. Can you imagine the lead levels where I live? I've got a refinery. I've got a smelter over yonder. I mean, it's not good.
Yeah.
Not good at all.
That's probably not good. And if anybody of our listeners, if you have hens and you're eating the eggs, maybe there's somewhere nearby where you can get them tested.
Maybe good advice, because I think that there probably is somebody listening to our show or some people, and they're going to be soiling their pants right now and not very happy about that because, I don't even want to talk about it. It's just that bad. It's one of those things that I came across that I thought was important. From Carbon Tracker, the UK government's oil and gas authority has estimated the total bill for North Sea oil decommissioning will be 51 billion pounds. Now, but because of the government's tax policy, the British taxpayer will be responsible for at least 40% of that cost over the coming decades. This is something we're going to be talking about a lot. It is the reality of gas going away. We're going to get stuck with the bill, aren't we? Yeah,
and there's been a lot of talk in the UK lately. There's some sweet tax deals for oil and gas companies in the UK. They're getting a bit of a free ride, which is unfortunate.
California has adopted 2045 as an offshore wind target. Plans on installing 25 gigawatts by that time. That is, again, 25 nuclear reactors worth of almost, not quite, but, optimistically, if the wind never stopped, that's what there would be. And it's not, just as a comparison, it's not insignificant. That is a lot, a lot of power amazing. By 2045. So Xpeng is releasing its S4 superchargers. This is the Chinese EV manufacturer. They've just announced their S4 superchargers on Supercharger Day. That's not Tesla Supercharger Day. That's a Chinese company. They've opened 1,000 superchargers so far in China, and they say, and they demonstrated this with their new model of car, 210 kilometers or 131 miles of charging in range in 5 minutes of charging. And they demonstrated that. So 10 to 80% of a full modern large battery in as little as 20 minutes. And this is a 800-volt class EV charger with a peak power output of 480 kilowatts, which I think is probably around where we're going to stop, is around there. I don't think we're going to go, I don't think we need to really.
Yeah. And you always wonder at a certain point, it will maybe degrade the batteries if you end up charging too quickly. But, I think those figures are, we probably don't need to go faster than that.
And with new battery chemistries allowing for stronger and stronger charging and things like that, who knows what's going to happen. But that, Brian, is our time for this week for the summer show. Fire us an email right now, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter. We're on TikTok. We're even on Instagram. We're everywhere you want us to be. We have 2 YouTube channels now, by the way. One for audio and one for everything else that has video. So go there, find us, watch the show, watch our clips, tell your friends. And if you're new to the show, remember, subscribe. Subscribe on your podcast app because we put out new shows every week and they'll be delivered right to you. And we look forward to talking to you next week.
See you next week.